Hello survivors and welcome to another Walking Dead Road to Survival video. In this video we're going to be taking a first look at Wangfa or Wangfa. There are two ways you can pronounce this name I've looked up. I'm going to go Wangfa. Now to any of my British friends out there, you know how close this is to a naughty word, so I've got to be very careful I don't have a slip of the tongue here. He is a typhoon character, of course, that's why the name is pretty difficult to go with. In terms of his visual design, he looks amazing. This is the 6-star version. The S-Class version looks exactly the same visually. But we're going to take a look at this 6-star first, just to see if the 6-star is viable to pick up as a standalone without getting that S-Class quickly. So we'll go through the stats. It's 2,394 attack, 2,629 defense, and 1,980 HP. Trait is tough, and the roll is damage. Now, that's a lot of defense for a character that's seen as a damage dealer. And that's because he does no damage based off of his attack stat. So you can sort of like compare him to, let's say, Zachary, who obviously did 1,000 damage to everybody with his rush. But it didn't matter how much attack he had, and that's why he was quite defensively based with his stats and also how people modded and geared out his weapon. Wangfa here is going to be quite similar, and he also has a similar sort of rush, if I'm honest. Target spotted is the name of it. Recharge rate is 66, so again, identical to Zachary. Deal 300 bleed damage to a line of enemies for 4 turns, so that's 1,200 damage to those 2 enemies. All enemies get crosshairs for 3 turns and 300 hemorrhage damage, which increases each turn plus 150 bleed damage per turn. So if you don't understand how hemorrhage works, after each turn it goes up to 450 the next turn, then there's 600. It can also be lacerated, so if this character rushes, someone can lacerate and instantly make it 600 hemorrhage. The next turn it will go up to 750, then it can be lacerated again to 1500. The thing about hemorrhage is it never wears off. It isn't like after a certain amount of turns it wears off. It's there until that character dies or cleanses it. That's the only way you can get rid of hemorrhage. And considering the second part of this rush goes to everybody, that means if they don't have anyone to cleanse it, all those characters are going to eventually die. And it's a race against time for a defense team or an attack team to win that raid. Now, because his rush is so quick, he can also keep that crosshairs up 24/7. So those deaths will be guaranteed pretty much to be decaps, so that revive becomes useless. Because that's what crosshairs does. When a character dies with the crosshairs debuff, it's a guaranteed decap. Very, very powerful rush, but kind of like when Shiva was first released, I think a lot of people are going to react instantly to this being hugely overpowered, but it's not going to be quick. This is going to take a long time. Hemorrhage to get up to the thousands, which is going to take to kill S-Class characters, will take a lot of turns. But on a defense team, I can see this guy being very, very annoying. However, I'm not sure about the viability just because, like I said, he's a 6-star. 6 stars are quite easily countered. If someone has an S-Class Heng Yen, for instance, you can rush a Heng Yen turn 2 pretty easily. Actually destroy Wangfa here really, really quick. But we'll go across his active skill and have a little look as well. Heal reduction and AP gain. Initial cooldown of 3, cooldown of 4, number of uses 5, 100% heal reduction for 3 turns to a line of enemies. This character gains 35% AP. Now this active is quite nice in terms of blocking revives and heals to a line of enemy for 3 turns. However, the second part of it with the AP gain, this as a 6-star will not give him enough AP on an attack team to get his rush after another attack. He'll have to attack 2 more times still. However, on a defense team, that would be enough AP, so he wouldn't be losing a turn if you were to rank this up if you were intending to use him on a defense team. Now, he's got a unique leader skill, which we've been seeing on a couple of these S-Class characters. All tough and strong teammates get a very large bonus to AP when attacking. At the beginning of each wave, up to 5 enemies get crosshairs for 3 turns. Now, I personally don't think this is that great a leader skill. I would prefer, personally, to have a defensive stat instead of that crosshairs for the first 3 turns. I know that a kill with crosshairs is decapped, but his rush is so quick that's going to go off probably before you kill really important characters. So I don't think that part of the leader skill is actually that great in combination with Wangfa's rush. It would have been better if it was 30 or 40% defense. It is also worth noting he only has a very large bonus as a 6-star, whereas most 6-star characters have a huge bonus to AP when attacking. So this is kind of one of the worst leader skills I've seen in terms of balanced power versus other leader skills. For instance, Diego has a huge bonus to AP when attacking, and those teammates get 40% attack. It is tough and strong as well with Diego, and personally I think that's a better leader skill. So as mentioned before, he is an S-class character, and this is what he looks like as an S-class. He goes to limited edition, he gets that nice funky S in the top left-hand corner. Now the one thing is his visuals don't change at all, which I'm kind of grateful for because he does look really cool. Like this, like I already said. Now his stats obviously get massively boosted just to S-class stats and the vet rings on top. 4,144 attack, 4,555 defense, and 3,538 HP. His trait obviously remains as tough. He's still a damage dealer role. His rush name now changed from target spotted to targets acquired. I like that. The recharge rate is still 66 AP, which is extremely fast because on certain teams, you're going to be able to get him off turn 2, maybe even turn 1 if you build a team around him properly. There is a small boost to his rush, as with all S-class characters. He now deals 300 bleed damage to up to 3 enemies for 4 turns instead of a line of enemies. And now all enemies get crosshairs for 4 turns and 300 hemorrhage damage. So the hemorrhage damage is the same, but crosshairs has now been boosted to 4 turns from 3. And this, if anything, just makes the leader skill even more useless because the crosshairs is definitely going to last long enough until he rushes again. And like I said before, he can rush really quickly, and most people are probably going to have to build teams for him to rush as quickly as possible if they were to get him to make the best use of him. That extra turn earlier on the rush is going to be great with Wangfa, basically because that hemorrhage just takes so long to rank up. Once he's rushed, he kind of doesn't need to do much else. Unless there's someone on that other team that can cleanse hemorrhage, his job's pretty much done. So you definitely want to get that off as quickly as possible. He gets a big boost on his active skill, and it goes from initial cooldown 3 to initial cooldown 2. Up to 5 enemies get 100% heal reduction for 3 turns. This character gains 60% AP, and that changes the AP gain here being viable on defense and attack. Up to 5 enemies part is just insane. Obviously, the entire team then gets 100% heal reduction. There is, generally speaking, no downside to doing this active skill. The only risk you've got is if he is exhausted, he will take damage based off that 60%, and it'll be 6 times whatever the exhaust is. So if he's exhausted for 500, he'll take 3,000 damage. And it would be main damage as well, so very, very difficult to heal. Now the leader skill gets boosted as well, and this is kind of strange because this is where it gets boosted to huge. So it gets boosted to a 6-star level at this point when he's an S-class character. All tough and strong teammates get a huge bonus to AP when attacking. And again, I mean, it looks good and it sounds good. At the beginning of each wave, up to 5 enemies get crosshairs for 4 turns. But like I said, as the 6-star version, and even more so for the S-class, just because you're definitely going to be able to get that rush off nice and early because of the active, giving much more AP gain. With the right team around him, he can potentially rush turn 1. And crosshairs already goes to everybody on that rush. So it's, like I said, that leader skill, not great. But personally, I would have preferred he had a bad leader skill than a good specialist skill, because I think this guy is really, really strong. I think if he was used next to, say, an S-class P, he could be really good on a defense team, and he's viable with a Priya on an attack team. I think this is one of the first characters, maybe except Raulito, who has got quite good longevity when it comes to being used on attack and defense. I think the majority of S-class characters can be used on both attack and defense right now, but eventually we're going to get to a point where Priya's going to have to be only used really on an attack. Krista's only going to be used on attack, because on defense they're going to become liabilities. You know, they're going to become the Tyrese in the 6-star era on defense teams, whereas when the 6 stars first came out, you put Tyrese on a defense team, he was destroying 5-star characters just with the huge amount of stats he's got. So we're going to transition into that point where defensive characters are going to be much more important. Now, Wangfa is seen as a damage dealer, but it's exactly like Zachary, like I said already. And I would say he's actually a pretty good 6-star as well. He'll be pretty fun to use. He could be used on an attack team. 6-star viability is mainly going to be attack teams in the future, and I think he definitely has a place. The second he rushes, he's pretty much done. Like, it doesn't matter if he gets killed because he's done his job. Hemorrhage eventually will kill the opponents. And if you have a lacerator, just even better. It will just tear up much quicker, and you can take out Pete's and so on really quickly. I can, however, see a sort of end to the bleed meta that we're seeing. All these characters coming out of bleed, just because they're so heavy right now, and Wangfa is definitely one of the strongest we've seen, that there has to be a counter coming out down the line. And I wouldn't really be surprised if it came out just before War of Champions to be that must-have character just before the final weekend. Sort of like what we had with Zachary in the first War of Champions, kind of what we had with the S-Class releases just before TOC final. That does seem to be a running theme at the moment. But now until then, I think this guy's going to be great. And I think I'm probably going to try and get this character at least as a 6-star, just because as a minimum, he looks like a lot of fun. But do tell me what you think about Wangfa. Do you think he's too strong? Do you think you're going to go for him? He is a tough character. He is a damage dealer, but you're going to be piling so much defense and HP on this guy with the combat mods and weapons. He's going to be pretty monstrous. That is the end of my video. Thank you very much for tuning in, guys. And as always, keep on surviving, guys. Keep on surviving.